I feel like I'm stuck in an emergency that never ends. For years, decades really. But who hasn't? I'm fighting that feeling too. I mean, any gay man in my age cohort, those of us who are left, has experienced so much of this. Over the years, I lost 2 partners. Whenever I say that, Lady Bracknell comes to mind. You know, that moment in Act 1 when she says, "To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness." No? Too cold-blooded? You don't rely on bitter sarcasm to get through. Well, now you know something important about me. These losses occurred years ago, decades. But that seems not to make a bit of difference. Okay, organizing this is a problem. Proximate or historical? Proximate. My second partner was named Joe, my husband really, though this was before equal marriage rights had been legislated. But we were very self-authorizing. We had a big ceremony and a party in the upstairs social room, Central Presbyterian on Park. And that was because our caterers worked out of that kitchen, really. He was supposed to take care of me. Joe was HIV negative. I'd been positive since, well, at least since 1982, even though that was before the virus was isolated and there wasn't a test for it. Hell, there wasn't even a name for it. But it would have been impossible for me not to have picked it up by then. I met Joe in a support group. I joined it a couple of months after my partner Mason died. It was the one group I could find that worked with my patient schedule. It was a kind of combination caregiver bereavement group. It turns out our partners died within about 6 weeks of each other. Joe lost Christopher around Christmas. I don't think it was at all unusual back then for a pair of grieving men to couple off together. Back before the protease inhibitors, everyone was hip deep in death back then. But even before they arrived, it was possible for me to believe for long periods of time that I wasn't going to get sick. We didn't start dating till after I left the group. The group, it stopped being helpful to me. After being with patients, it was hard to be with the suffering of more people after work. It was summer by this time. I had ruled out the idea of having a relationship with an HIV-negative man, but Joe was certain he wanted it. Me. He would say to me more than once that he was certain I was going to outlive him. Turns out he was right. Joe died in his sleep. It was a stupid accident involving prescription cough medicine with hydrocodone in it in conjunction with his severe sleep apnea. The doctor speculated that the hydrocodone suppressed his body's reflex so much that when the apnea stopped his breathing, his body couldn't rouse itself enough. Joe developed a nasty cough, and the doctor prescribed the strongest cough medicine he could. A friend of Joe's, who was also a patient of this doctor, told me that he was worried, the doctor, that I would sue him for prescribing Joe a narcotic. Rico, this friend, told me the doctor was going to come to the memorial service, but I don't think he did, at least as far as I know. How could he think as if I did? Anyway, it was a super effective cough medicine. It worked. Joe stopped coughing. He liked it so much that he drank the whole bottle in about 6 hours. He was extremely stoned when I got home from work that night. I'd never seen Joe stoned before. Neither of us drank or used drugs at all. Joe had been clean and sober for years, rehab, the whole thing. He developed a heroin problem when he was an actor in LA. He'd been on a sitcom and had felt the jolt of excitement when he was one of the boys everyone was looking at. That was a very fleeting moment. Then no one was looking. was supposed to take care of me when the jig would finally be up, when I would get sick. At least, that's how I thought about it when I did. Joe seemed so solid. He projected stability, and I responded to that. 2 months after we started dating, he moved in. 10 years later, he was dead. Joe snored badly. I'd never heard snoring like that. It was Three Stooges loud, ridiculous, really. After years of frustration over this, he did a sleep study, and he was diagnosed with sleep apnea. His was very bad. He got a CPAP machine, which of course he hated and wouldn't use consistently. I don't think they were as user-friendly back then as they are now, at least so I gather. Once that we tried to sleep together, I didn't get any sleep at all. I couldn't even sleep when he moved to the couch in the living room. His snoring was so comically loud. But Joe was determined that we sleep together. It disappointed him terribly that we couldn't. That I'm a very poor sleeper in the best of conditions didn't help. He was heroic, really. He underwent 2 surgeries to trim the soft tissue in his throat. After one of them, he even attended a performance of Così fan tutte at the Met because the tickets were my Valentine's Day present. I bought them before the surgery was scheduled. He sat through the whole performance. Can you imagine? He would do anything to make it possible for us to sleep together, and nothing worked. Eventually, we found a workable compromise. We put a twin bed in the little room I'd used as an office before Joe moved in. We spend time in the big bed together until Joe fell asleep, and then I'd move to my bed in the small room, and I'd wake up early and crawl into bed with him in the morning. This worked. We slept. We had plenty of time together in bed, which was really good. We enjoyed each other a great deal. When I slept, I enjoyed things a lot more. Well, I got home at 8:30, and I found Joe on the toilet. So stoned, he didn't care that apparently he'd been there for some time. The bottle of cough medicine was in the bathroom wastebasket. It was empty. I tried to help get Joe into bed, but he refused. He said he was fine, he just needed to be left alone. I tried to get him to stand up, to at least pull his pants up, but he resisted. He was so stoned. He did that hovering, long, drawn-out, junky crouch. I don't suppose you've ever had occasion to see that up close. Out on the street, perhaps, in the bad old days. Yes, well, the stoned person drops down so slowly they seem never to touch the ground and never to stop moving. I've never been so close to someone in that condition, certainly not in my home. I've seen junkies in that posture many times, but I wondered if I should call someone, but I didn't know what I would say, that I was frightened. And what could anyone say to me? What kind of intervention could anyone make? And all he needed was to sleep it off. I mean, I guessed that. That's what I told myself. So I left him in the bathroom, and I went into my room to read. And I checked on him again in about an hour, and he seemed a little more alert, and this encouraged me. I wasn't so afraid. So I decided I would check on him hourly. Each time I did, he was a little better. He was coming out of it. He could form a sentence. He told me to leave him the fuck alone. The last time I checked was at midnight. I just finished reading American Pastoral by Philip Roth. I helped get Joe into bed. I had a full day of patients the next day. I had to get some sleep. I thought everything was okay. I got up at 5:45 to piss, and I was going to crawl into bed with him. That was our routine. He was quiet. He looked comfortable, stretched out on his back, the covers kicked out of the way. His mouth had settled into a sweet half-smile. And I bent down to stroke his chest, and he was cold. And I realized that that odd bluish color he had wasn't because of the slant of the early morning light through the slats of the horizontal blinds. It was because he was dead.